I want to tell you about my friend, Elizabeth. I've told you about her before. She and I met more than 20 years ago when she first came to live at L'Arche. Elizabeth had Down syndrome. A petite woman, she came up to about here on me. She didn't take up a lot of space, literally or figuratively. I mean, she was capable, solid, and matter-of-fact. She was always on the lookout for what people around her needed, and she quietly took care of it. An early riser, she was always the first one up, quietly moving through her morning routine, opening the curtains in the living room, setting the table for breakfast, making coffee, porridge, and toast. As she left the house in the morning, she'd get herself ready, then check to see if her housemates needed help getting their shoes and coats on. At the end of the day, she reversed the routine, welcoming people home, helping them take off their shoes and coats and settle in, clearing the table after supper, loading the dishwasher, packing her lunch for the next day, closing the curtains in the living room. Her conversational style, too, was trim and compact. She used efficient phrases to get her point across. Nice day, sunny day. Oh boy, crazy weather. How's your day going? And whatever you said in return, she'd reply, my day okay, just busy. If there was no one else around, she'd look at you and say, it's you and me, kid. For the most part, conversations with her had few words and an even tone, and lots of what people in Finland would call comfortable silence. She'd sit holding a cup of tea and look around and say, so? Now, usually that's a conjunction, a linking word. We expect something to follow that. So what? But not for Elizabeth. She used it differently, as a statement to express contentment, maybe resignation, or maybe just to say, this is how things are right now. So. There was something so grounding about her, a solidness that anchored any group she was a part of. But the one thing that was never matter of fact with Elizabeth was her greetings. When it came to her loved ones, greetings were an art form. When she'd spot you from a distance, she would stop in her tracks and drop whatever she was doing to call out your name, lift her arms in the air, and then come running to you. And what it was like to receive that greeting. If you weren't paying attention, she might just tip you over with her enthusiasm. And if you were considerably larger than she might just vault into your arms so that you could pick her up for a twirl. Elizabeth was a leaper. I think she enjoyed the visual irony of someone this tall getting a boost up to impossible heights. There's this great photo of her meeting some professional basketball player, and they're at eye level, both of them with huge grins. He is standing, she is seated on the shoulders of a friend of hers. There's another photo of her visiting the firehouse. She's dressed in firefighter's gear, enormous on her, huge sagging pants held up with red suspenders. She has a baseball cap on backwards, and she's climbing up into the passenger seat of the fire truck. There was the time she was performing with her liturgical dance group at a friend's funeral, and they were dancing to a very touching song called You Raise Me Up. And they'd practiced a move where her dance partner, one of her favorite people, was to lift her gently in a standing position, just ever so slightly, with her arms at her sides. But as he approached her from behind, she switched things up a little bit. She grabbed his arms and wrapped them around her waist, and with an expression of sheer glee on her face, she picked up her legs, extended them straight out, and yelled, "Whee!" And her partner, well, what could he do but spin her around? In today's gospel, we hear about another Elizabeth, also known for her exuberant welcome. This Elizabeth is one of the great supporting characters of the Advent cast in Luke's gospel. She is the one who prepares the way for the one who prepares the way for Jesus. We recall that of all the evangelists, Luke is distinctive in his portrayal of women as essential partners in God's saving work. Here's what we know about this Elizabeth. She's from a priestly family, a descendant of Aaron, and she's married to a priest, Zechariah. She knew the stigma of being considered barren in a culture where women were valued for their ability to produce children. She became pregnant late in life after her husband was visited by an angel who announced that the couple would have a child named John, who would serve as a prophet to God's people. And she'd remained in seclusion in her pregnancy for 5 months. Perhaps she was anxious about sharing the news too soon. In the passage we hear today, we encounter Elizabeth at her home in the hill country outside of Jerusalem upon the arrival of her young relative, Mary. Was she Mary's cousin or aunt? We don't know. The word is just relative or kinswoman. We can only wonder what was on Mary's mind as she made that 4-day trek alone from her hometown of Nazareth. She, too, was pregnant, following a mysterious announcement from the angel Gabriel. We might wonder if she'd told anyone yet, or if she was keeping it to herself. Maybe she was afraid people would think she was crazy or a liar. Maybe she was running away to hide from those who would judge her, perhaps with severe punishment. Whatever burden Mary might have been carrying, she seeks refuge in Elizabeth's home. And when Elizabeth hears her voice, she responds, "Blessed are you, and blessed is the child that you're carrying. When I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leapt for joy." We can just imagine Mary's relief as Elizabeth wrapped her arms around her and drew her close, the sense of safety as she leaned into this wise older woman who sees her for who she really is, the Mother of God, something that would not have been visible to others yet. Imagine a sense of being welcomed wholeheartedly, without judgment. And in response to Elizabeth's high-spirited welcome, Mary is moved to celebrate her own pregnancy, perhaps for the first time. She's overcome with joy, and she sings, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior." Can you picture this joyful encounter? The Spirit stirring in one, greeting the Spirit stirring in the other, each serving as a sign to the other of her chosenness before God. We're told that Mary stays with Elizabeth for another 3 months. 3 months of landing with her feet on solid ground. 3 months of going through the motions of everyday life under Elizabeth's care and nurture. The morning routine, the evening routine, the cooking, the meal times, the washing up. Moments of chatter. How's your day going? Oh boy, crazy weather. It's you and me, kid. Or perhaps just comfortable silence. So, each day another step for Mary in growing into her most unusual call to bring the child of God into the world. When I think of my own dear friend, Elizabeth, she was at once so confident and so grounded. She knew her worth. And what a blessing that knowing has been for so many of her dear friends, for me. During my not very linear 10-year journey to ordination, my Elizabeth was such a steadfast presence, helping me to shake off roadblocks and detours and keeping my feet on the ground. When ordination day finally rolled around, I remember standing with her at the back of the cathedral lined up for the procession. She was my lay presenter. And as the people in front of us started to move, she looked at me and grinned and said, "It's you and me, kid." And she took my hand and tucked my arm under hers and marched me down the aisle. The name Elizabeth, Elisheva in Hebrew, means, "My God is abundance." My God is abundance. I'm pretty sure we could all use at least one Elizabeth in our lives. Someone who embodies God's abundant love for us. Someone who leaps for joy at the sound of our voice and comes running to greet us. Someone who sees us for who we really are and loves us all the same. Someone who keeps our feet on the ground. Someone who recognizes the presence of God in us and helps us to grow into that reality. So, if you're looking for an Advent practice this week, why not reach out to an Elizabeth in your life, someone who has nurtured you or encouraged you or lifted you in her exuberant embrace, and thank her. Keep in mind, this may not be someone older. This may, in fact, be one of the youngest people you know. Or perhaps you can be an Elizabeth. Go on, supersize your greetings. Leap for joy at the sight of your friends. Drop everything and run to greet them in a socially appropriate way. Let the Spirit in you recognize the Spirit in others. Hold a generous space for someone who's having a hard time. Help them to see their deep worthiness. Tell them that they are full of grace. Bless them in the leaping and in the landing and in the in-between. This is how we can prepare the way for love to be born again in our world.